Well, Vice President J.D. Vance had a trip planned to Israel for Tuesday, but reportedly canceled it in the wake of Israel's military operation in Gaza. Now, the Vance team cited logistical reasons for canceling the trip, but didn't expand on that. But Axios quotes a U.S. official who says the decision was made because the VP didn't want his trip to suggest that the Trump administration endorsed the Israeli decision to launch a massive operation at a time when the U.S. is pushing for a ceasefire and a hostage deal, end quote.
Optics are kind of bad.
So what kind of massive operation exactly are we talking about here? Well, Israel is calling it Operation Gideon's Chariots, and it's a full-scale invasion of Gaza with an attempt to displace every single one of the remaining 2 million civilians who live there. It also involves Israeli airstrikes, ground troops, armored divisions, naval units on a level not ever seen before. It also involves completely leveling buildings that they've already bombed. So take a look at this. Here you can see part of this operation where the entire area has already been totally decimated, but now Israel is destroying the rest of it, presumably to start building new condo complexes, shopping centers, all of that. Israel says they have issued evacuation warnings via leaflets and text messages. So the media and civilians who stick around will die. By the way, I love that they have, can we play that video again? I love that they have drone footage. Like, here's what it looks like. Here's exactly what we're handling right now. This is drone footage. Like, we're going to hover here, and here's the area we're going to completely level. We've already killed all the people here, so let's just flatten the rest of it. Mr. Drone, just start flying up, get a better visual of the clouds here.
Easy pan down.
Yeah, get a nice glamour shot.
Yes, we're going to do that to you, but didn't you get my text? I told you to get out of there.
So explain
that's
that.
not on me.
So explain that. They sent these text messages out.
Right, which begs the question, how do they have every Palestinian's text number? How do they have access to the Palestinians' cell network? But okay, we know how, right? It's just a big blaring question. But yeah, they say, look, we distribute leaflets. We told you we're going to do this. If you stick around, that's on you. It's like when a gecko gets in your house and dies. Like, you came here. That's on you. It's not my bad decision. That's basically their explanation for all of this.
Yeah, exactly. So again, we sent you text messages. We told you, hey, pay attention. And if you're still there, then sorry, we want you to go to these safe zones. But of course, many of the safe zones have already been destroyed. So basically nothing is safe.
That's happened before when they told them to go to the Rafah crossing. And then they bombed that while they were en route. So, would you trust the Israeli government and go to the safe zone that they have indicated is safe when, if past is prologue, that's where more bombs will be?
Dan Spalding, even in our chat room, brings up a great point. Says, how do the Palestinians even have a charged phone that works in that rubble?
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what the United Nations says, is they can't charge their phones. You can't rely on the fact that they'll get a text from you. Get out or die. Do you want me to take this?
No. Yeah.
Okay. Well, France, the United Kingdom, and Canada issued a joint condemnation of the Israeli military operation on Monday. Now, again, we've been seeing Emmanuel Macron continuously speaking on behalf of the Palestinian people. So this is not necessarily new, but they are ratcheting up the threats, which they have never done before. So they joined forces now with the United Kingdom and Canada. They say that Israel's reaction to October 7th is wholly disproportionate. They call out the Netanyahu government for breach of international humanitarian law. They say that if Israel does not stop it, let through the aid, stop bombing civilians, then they are committed to recognizing a Palestinian state as a contribution to achieving a two-state solution and are prepared to work with others to that end. I mean, what's a state there? Like, you saw the land. They're recognizing that as a country now. What's left to recognize? But they also sort of issue a veiled threat is what I'm looking for. A veiled threat that we could start to pull back any international relations with Israel because of this. So, the UK has such a small Jewish population. This won't this won't cost them the same way that it would the United Kingdom. But they're saying we will look at sanctions. We will look at, what we've done to Russia. Do you believe that they would do this? I don't know. And it would not have the same effect as if the United States did. They don't supply the same level of weaponry. Now, Netanyahu, of course, did not take kindly to this statement. He called this a huge prize for Hamas, told them, you need to follow President Trump's lead, which means Trump does what I say. You need to do that. He does not condemn me for bombing the civilians. That's the behavior I expect of you. Follow the Trump template. He also added, we will take control of all the territory of the Strip. So it seems to be, I mean, we study this, we read it, and we're like, this is happening. Israel will take Gaza. There's nothing anyone can. The only person, we talked about this last week, that can do anything about it is Donald Trump. And it does not seem that the appetite really is there for the Americans to make it stop.
I see a bunch of people in the chat just saying how disappointed they are. Like,
in us?
No, not
in the
us.
United States.
We don't have anything to do with Gaza, but no, saying basically President Trump and what the Trump administration is doing. Slick 102 says, what about the U.S. doing something for F's sake? Trump totally walked back his crap. Totally walked this crap back. So yeah, I don't exactly.
I don't think Donald Trump made us a promise to speak on behalf of the Palestinians on the campaign. It has always been apparent that he is willing to allow Israel to do as it pleases. I don't think that should be a surprise to us, even though we've seen condemnation of Netanyahu. We've seen him build bridges with other Middle Eastern countries. We've seen him speak against the suffering of the people in Gaza without acknowledging who is causing it. This sort of feeble attempt continues. We know that, but it feels awful to be living my life knowing that an entire nation is being destroyed before our very eyes. We were warned by Holocaust tales not to do this, not to let it happen again, and we're powerless against it.
So here's the deal. I cannot go online without using ExpressVPN. I do a lot of traveling. We cover a lot of really difficult stories here on the show. And there's absolutely no way that I'm trusting my private data and our sources that we speak with journalists around the world just on an open Wi-Fi network. So what is a VPN? That's exactly what ExpressVPN does. A VPN is simply a virtual private network. It's a tunnel between your device and the internet. It's designed to keep your online activity private and secure. So maybe you're not doing like the kind of crazy journalism that we're doing here on this show, or speaking with journalists who are in very dangerous war zones around the world. Maybe you're just doing your online banking and you're at an open Wi-Fi network at a hotel or a coffee shop or something like that, an unsecured Wi-Fi network. Well, that's where you have to use a VPN to protect yourself, to make sure that people aren't snooping on your private data. It's on all of our devices because it allows us to basically hide exactly what our traffic is doing, and we're able to spoof our location just like we're in the United States or another country. I mean, for crying out loud, when I'm in Europe, there are certain websites you're just not able to access because the European Union will block access to real news sites. So guess what? You need to, spoof your location like you would in the United States. Not only does ExpressVPN keep your data secure, but it also unlocks the full internet. I even use it to watch different news broadcasts that are blocked in certain countries. It's absolutely crazy that we live in this era of censorship. But ExpressVPN is a total game changer. Find out right now how you can get 4 months for free by scanning the QR code that's right here on your screen, or clicking the link in the description box below this video, or simply go to expressvpn.com/redacted. Again, that's expressvpn.com/redacted. Well, fireworks on Capitol Hill. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Syria is just 2 weeks away from civil war. I wonder whose fault that was. Syria, one of the most peaceful countries in the world for a while, until Barack Obama decided to destroy that country, and Biden's CIA then ousted Assad. So Marco Rubio has this to say about the... Do you want me to use ChatGPT to answer that? No, I don't. But Marco Rubio can answer it. Go ahead.
The bad news is that the transitional authority figures, they didn't pass their background check with the FBI, okay? They've got a tough history and one that we understand. But on the flip side of it is, if we engage them, it may work out, it may not work out. If we did not engage them, it was guaranteed to not work out. In fact, it is our assessment that, frankly, the Transitional Authority, given the challenges they're facing, are maybe weeks, not many months, away from potential collapse and a full-scale civil war of epic proportions, basically the country splitting up. The good news is that there is a Syrian national identity. It is one of the places in the Middle East where Alawis and Druze and Christians and Sunni and Shia have lived along, and Kurds have lived alongside each other underneath the banner of a Syrian identity until it was broken by a butcher, Assad, who pitted them against each other. So they face a number of challenges.
Yeah, that last part is wrong, of course. But nevertheless, Syria, we've been warning you about, is about to face, I mean, it's already facing disaster, of course, a genocide already unfolding there. And, of course, President Trump shaking hands with this terrorist Jolie last week in Saudi Arabia. Why is this happening? I don't exactly know what's happening here.
Clayton's phone keeps trying to ring in on the conversation.
Yeah, so, I do not want to talk to you.
You need to tell it that we're busy.
Okay, I'll turn that off. But there were more fireworks, by the way, when Democrat senators who had voted for Rubio now said that they regretted it because our position of deporting illegals, cutting USAID. Imagine having problem with cutting USAID fraud, but Senator Chris Van Hollen is upset about it. Watch.
I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's just a flippant
what
statement, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I didn't ask
Senator,
question.
please let the Secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his
Your
response.
time's up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add.
Well-
your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman-
Secretary, please.
Well, I'd like to. I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation.
I
don't regret
Sudan, Mr.
psychosocial support services.
I
for
raised
USAID.
Sudan, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond,
not
Mr.
Mozambique.
Chairman, or do I?
Senator, I'd ask you to suspend. You had 7 straight minutes of
I chose
railing
to
on-
use my time that way, Mr. Chairman. That's my right to
Please
use my
suspend
time that way.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, I can go on. I mean, there's other things here. We spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come,
Mr.
you're going to see
Chairman,
who you went to
look,
defend.
Senator,
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary
No.
Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments
Senator,
like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You
Secretary
had your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the
Senator,
United States because
well,
he hasn't done it under oath.
Ouch. Well, they do not like having their money cut off. They do not like USAID cutting off. They certainly don't like the fact that we are deporting and cutting off the visas for illegal aliens, for gangbangers and other people like that. Certainly upsetting those individuals.
You know, speaking of, I was thinking about this, and maybe you don't care about this, but I do. So Angelina Jolie at a Cannes Film Festival this weekend was asked about USAID, and she said, I'm really sickened and angry about it because she presents herself as this humanitarian, as this erudite, well-studied humanitarian, so caring about the world that she adopts children from Africa, that it's absolutely, you know, I know things that you don't. And Vogue magazine for years has presented her as somebody knowed and learned. And I bought that when I was young and liked fashion magazines. But all she has to do is read one stinking book and realize that USAID has funded the drug trade that has caused hundreds of thousands of deaths in Southeast Asia. And then she'd be done. She wouldn't speak on behalf of this. So I feel, watching her speak on behalf of USAID, like she's been a psyop all along for young women. And I'm pissed about it because it doesn't take very much. It's like at the beginning of the first whistleblower book about the drug trade, you see USAID like threatening rice farmers, food for drugs, that kind of thing. Like, you don't have to study that much to know that. And I'm pissed about it because I bought that dumb shit. about Angelina Jolie. This is not about her, but it is. Like, I was thinking about that today, about how you have these elites who are like George Clooney, who are supposedly so well read. They don't know. And so we follow them like, oh, yeah, we really need to adopt black children in Africa. We need to, send them money. That's racism. And I'm done with it. And I'm pissed I'm pissed that she was used in that way and that she's not smarter and that I fell for it. I'm pissed at myself more than anything else.
Well, I mean, again, these people live in a bubble. And so when you surround yourself with this bubble, when you don't go outside of that bubble at all, you're very likely not to ever have someone in a dinner conversation kind of challenge you on this. And you have so many people that are sycophants who are surrounding Angelina Jolie. People are making lots of money off of her, assistants and aides who are worried about taking care of her hair and everything. Do you think that anyone's sitting there on the couch and combing her hair being like, well, Angelina, you may really want to reconsider your position on USAID.
No, clearly not. Clearly not. But I think that the way that she's presented to like a young woman, I remember reading profiles on her and I'm like, wow, she's so beautiful. She's married to Brad Pitt. She seems to know so much about Sudan. They tell me, these profiles in Vogue where she's sitting there in like cute cut off jeans and her hair is in a ponytail and she's surrounded by, policy documents that she's reading on her own. And what is, a young girl who has not done that reading is going to think, oh, she really knows that. Okay, then I'm going to listen to her. We really need to be a charity society. So anyway, okay, I'll stop going on about that because we have more to talk about. I want to talk about the FDA's approval of COVID vaccines because the FDA now says it will no longer approve COVID vaccines without clinical trials for the general population. So from now on, it will only approve COVID vaccines for adults age 65 and over and individuals age 6 months and older that have at least one high-risk condition like asthma, diabetes, cancer, obesity. Okay, this comes from a New England Journal of Medicine publication by the new FDA Commissioner Marty Makary and Dr. Vinay Prasad, the head of the FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. It means no approval of new COVID vaccines for the general population unless there are real clinical trials, not emergency ones, not rushed ones like we had before. Now, the FDA policy does not mean that it will be removed from the childhood vaccine schedule because the CDC makes that decision. So for now, the COVID vaccines will stay there, even though some of them were only tested on mice. They still will remain in the childhood vaccine schedule. Hopefully the CDC does something about that. Now, at the very least, it means that these shots going forward will need full approval. But before you get too excited about that, I want to show you how this is currently working in practice because there is still a major concern to this approach. Now, last week, the Food and Drug Administration issued an approval for the Novavax COVID-19 vaccine. This is the only non-mRNA vaccine. Actually, I believe Johnson & Johnson also doesn't have mRNA, but the one on the market. The vaccine was approved for adults ages 65 and older and individuals 12 and up with one underlying health condition. Now, it did have clinical trials, but too bad for them, I read them. And here is the major problem. The trials had, some groups had one vaccine and some groups had two 21 days apart. Well, the trials only showed a reduction in symptomatic COVID 7 days after the second shot. But the FDA didn't approve 2 shots. This FDA approval is only for 1 shot of Novavax. So is 1 shot even effective at preventing COVID? We don't know. That was not tested. So why in a clinical trial would you give someone a vaccine and then not test them for whether or not that makes no sense. So the only data we have on the effectiveness of the Novavax vaccine is for 2 doses, but the FDA approved 1 dose. So there's no publicly available data showing that a single dose of Novavax prevents COVID. That's weird. When they say that the shot lowers the risk of COVID, there's also holes there. They didn't test everyone who got the vaccine. They only did tests on people who showed symptoms within 7 days. So there could have been people who got it on the 8th day. There could have been asymptomatic cases. We don't know. And this vaccine is only proven to lower immunity within 7 days. What happens after 7 days? Who the heck knows? We don't know. So would you get a vaccine for 7 whole days of immunity? especially if it came with the risks of myocarditis, heart inflammation, and also eye inflammation. Those risks seem lower than the Moderna and Pfizer risks of that, but that still remains a concern. Plus, there was a serious event of Guillain-Barré syndrome, and the FDA notes that Novavax can issue this vaccine, but follow up on that. If anyone else gets this, let us know. Also, the company Novavax has to tell the FDA how the vaccine does when it starts being shipped to hospitals. So they don't know. They have not tested. Can you put it in a truck? Can you refrigerate it? Can you get it to the doctor's office? Does it still have the same formulation once it gets there? They literally don't know. They said by July, Novavax must submit a study called shipping evaluation to see how the vaccine has done in the real world, meaning they haven't tested it. Which is actually not that uncommon of practice, that the FDA will approve a vaccine and not know at all how it does in the transportation cycle, which is crazy, right? They tested on us. Who knows what it's going to do when it's like jiggled around in a truck, flown on an airplane? They literally don't know. And the FDA says, we'll approve you for now. Let us know by July how that does. So why would someone take this given that the dosage was not trialed? I mean, it was, but we don't have effectivity for that dosage. And its effectivity rate is not known for that dosage. Plus, we don't know how it does in the real world. And especially given such a low prevalence of COVID right now. Look how little COVID there is in the United States right now. So your guess is as good as mine. So even though the Novavax vaccine did have trials, there are not really any trials the population should trust. And it's only being approved for compromised populations. And the approval was not even based on those trials. So is this what we should expect now that the Food and Drug Administration says, well, we're going to require trials? But I don't want trials like this. We want real trials. At the very least, Dr. Macri does lay this out. He says he wants at least trials to be on humans, not mice, as the second Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were. He wants them to be based on true saline placebos, which the original vaccines did do. But still, they're only testing for symptomatic COVID, and there's no requirement for how long they have to test that population. So again, if it's only 7 days, for 7 days you won't get COVID, that's not it. Surely Dr. Macri knows this. Maybe since we seem to think he's a well-intentioned doctor, he was one of the few honest voices during the pandemic. Surely these concerns about the Novavax approval did not escape his attention, but he's only been in office since April, so a few weeks. Maybe that one slipped past him. Surely he knows that in order to trust any COVID vaccine, that the public must see a lasting reduction in severe COVID due to the vaccine and a major reduction in the side effects that are still an issue. So I don't know, maybe this is just the first step of buttoning this up, but Rome wasn't built in a day. Let me know what you think of these vaccine trials that we are seeing. Bunker is a fantastic place to control your digital life, basically. It's a place where you can choose just one app for privacy, security, peace of mind. That's Bunker. It protects you against cyber criminals, scammers, surveillance, governments, AI. It's all up to you. But not only that, it's a place where your family can store your digital life together. So you think about, what happens if I die? Could my family get into my bank accounts? Could they get into my, folders where our family documents are? Well, with Bunker, the answer would be yes, because it's a personal vault to securely store family photos, financial information, IDs, tax documents, insurance information, and more. It's a one app that delivers supercharged privacy and security, letting you store, share, and communicate freely with those you trust. So right now, you can go to bunker.life right now. Use the code Redacted and you'll get your first 3 months free. So give it a try. See what it's like to have everything, not just some stuff on a Dropbox, some stuff in a password manager, some stuff you have a spyware, all of that. No, it's all in one place. So go to the App Store and you can download Bunker or go to bunker.life, BUNKR.life. Use the code Redacted and you'll get your first 3 months free. So once again, that's bunker.life. Use the code Redacted.
Well, the U.S. federal government just posted a new job opportunity for you. There are a few caveats, though. You'll be stationed near a tropical island, working long hours with cutting-edge rocket technology. The sunrises, of course, are beautiful there. The pay is decent and the vacation time is solid. Oh, and by the way, the island is radioactive and you might die of cancer. Would you like to take that job? Because that's exactly what's happening. The U.S. Space Force, yes, that's still a thing, is preparing to test commercial rockets on Johnson Atoll, which is a remote Pacific island about 800 miles from Hawaii. Here is Johnson Atoll, which is a U.S. Air Force base. You can see the U.S. Air Force base there. Sounds harmless, right? Except this place has a horrific past. The locals are already saying, oh, not this again. Really? We're going to go through this again? Back in the 1940s and 50s, Johnson Atoll was one of the U.S. military's favorite nuclear playgrounds, along with, of course, Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. It was part of a series of nuclear tests where they would drop atomic and hydrogen bombs on the island, old Navy ships, coral reefs, to see how they would respond. And if that meant blowing holes in the ocean, contaminating paradise, so be it. That's fine. It was all in the name of science.
And beating the Soviets.
Yeah. And
beating the Soviets to the nuclear race.
Yeah. Well, we had already beat them to it by launching the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But, we were racing further to build more sophisticated weapons.
Yeah.
And, but and by the way, the Soviets were watching all of these tests and they publicly said, we're not impressed.
Is that true?
That is true. They said, we're not impressed. They're like, yeah, okay. For the first one they dropped, they totally missed the target. They couldn't even get it where they needed to go. And the Soviets were like, not too interesting to us. Anyway, but here's what they don't want to tell you. This wasn't just some dusty corner of nowhere. These were lush living ecosystems. And now, the coral's dead, irradiated. The fish vanished. The land glows at night. Well, not really. But the radiation levels are still so high there that no one dares live there. The atoll is officially a U.S. wildlife refuge because humans aren't supposed to stay there. But wait, actually, it gets much worse. Bikini Atoll, the more infamous cousin of Johnston Atoll, this is where the U.S. military did something even more grotesque because in 1946, they wanted to test a massive nuke underwater. So what did they do? Well, they told the native residents of the island, hey, pack up your shit and leave so that we can blow up their island. Here, the residents can be seen packing up their things, putting them on a Navy ship. They invited the island's residents to go aboard the Navy ships, gave them front row seats to basically watch them blow up their home. Here's the king of the island invited on board to watch his island blown up.
The evacuated ruler of Bikini, King Judah, gets a front row seat at the bomb blast as he arrives aboard the Mount McKinley and is greeted by Admiral Blandy, Joint Task Force 1 commander.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? So the king's like, hey, okay, I get a front row seat to watch you blow up my island. There's actual archive footage, yes, where showing it right in front of Navy officers, reassuring locals, smiling, shaking their hands, right before detonating a bomb that irradiated their homes. Watch.
The awful roar of the blast, equal to a discharge of 60,000 depth charges, each weighing 600 pounds, strikes the ears of the observers. Many miles away, the raging might of searing flame, crushing force, and deadly radioactive water is seen falling in a killing mist as the great circular wall of sea closes in on the guinea pig fleet.
The way that was horrible and terrifying.
I love that. The guinea pig fleet. America ready to blow up their island.
All die. News at 11.
News of the Pacific is back again, and Americans blowing up more islands. Native population being moved off. Here is the press. They also invited members of the press, which I'm actually okay with this. They stood there, and they asked them to basically film it. Hey, just stand right here. You'll get some good shots. We don't know how it'll sear your skin off later or anything like that, but, it's fine. Just get some good film footage of this, get some radiation and some good film. And sailors who were on board at the time, many got cancer. Here they are being used as guinea pigs to see how their bodies would react to just basically watching the blast. Like, oh, yeah, at least you're covering your heads a little bit. least they bent their head downs a little bit. You know, by bending your head down a little bit in the middle of a nuclear blast, like, you should be fine. Should be totally fine.
Thank you for that. This is not real medical advice. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not duck and cover medical advice. Yeah, just if you ever see a nuclear blast,
expose yourself to nuclear bombs.
Just do this.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
I mean, you could also put a paper bag on your head. That may help. I don't know.
Yeah. Probably be more effective, actually. But don't worry, though. They were finally given the paltry sum of $75,000 for their cancers. That's right. This was a series of over 20 bombs that they dropped here. One of the tests created a 2,000-foot wide crater in the seafloor. That explosion triggered a massive tsunami that tossed warships around like bath toys, contaminated everything from the radioactive fallout. And then after the blast, the U.S. told the islanders, hey, they could go home soon. Well, that was a total lie. Bikini Atoll remains uninhabitable to this day. But they told them in the 1960s, hey, go back home. We think it's fine. Just go back home. That was a mistake. So these people went back home, and then they studied their bodies, studied their bloodstream, and found out that they had levels of cesium-137 in all these returnees who had come back. 75% increase in their bodies. So, you know, cancer. Then they said, you know what? Maybe that wasn't such a good idea, so we'll move you 400 miles away. Again. Better not return home anytime soon. So back to the Johnston Atoll a second. Even though there were no local civilians living there at the time of testing, the U.S. knowingly exposed soldiers and contractors to radiation. There's also photos and film of there standing there, eyes wide. Yeah, they're just like looking on. Here are these sailors just being used, watching a nuclear fireball with zero protection, no suits, no shielding, just skin and bone, absorbing gamma rays in the name of national security. And the sailors described it as night turning into day with intense heat on their skin. And now, of course, the Space Force is marching right back in. One Hawaiian conservation group called it a slap in the face to the people and wildlife still recovering years later from what they call decades of chemical warfare. By the way, Johnston Atoll was also used for millions of gallons of Agent Orange in that spot. Same chemical that caused widespread birth defects and cancer during the Vietnam War. They also stored sarin gas there, VX nerve gas on the island. So this is like not a place you want to go visit. And certainly not a place that we want to continue to contaminate. They buried little weapons of mass destruction under the sand there. So that's what we're planning at Space Force.